Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of Hollywood and foreign cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Tomás, Leonardo Miranda.
Hey there, it's time to bond.
It is time to bond. And Miguel Aido.
Hello there.
Hey. Three filmmakers in informal dialogue with a film review each episode. Today is Double Bill Day as we connect a modern film to an early one in the history of cinema. As part of our program, reviews in both English and Portuguese will be available for different listeners. Buckle up because today RWC celebrates 60 years of James Bond, cinema's most sophisticated spy with a license to kill. This episode will be in English and we'll be having a go at Kai Hamilton's 007 Goldfinger and Cary Fukunaga's 007 No Time to Die. Portuguese speakers can head to the Portuguese labeled content section. Now sit back and hope you enjoy.
Let's go, Bond!
So, No Time to Die, Goldfinger, all the Bonds, Celebration Day, party time.
Party
Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I don't
Goldfinger?
Goldfinger, I guess we can
And
start.
talk about them interchangeably.
Yeah, I don't know how you want to do and structure this.
Well, I took my notes interchangeably, very much comparing the two. And I think there will be moments I will be talking more about one than the other, but essentially there's a lot of ways I can pick it up in terms of comparisons.
Sounds good to me. To me, like, even watching so many Bond films, they kind of blend into one for a person. So I don't even know. I can tell them apart sometimes, to be honest.
Interesting. In what way can't you tell them apart?
I don't know.
What
It's
elements?
just... It's not even that I can't tell them apart. It's more that I'm trying to think what happened in them, and my mind goes blank. I
Very
don't
interesting.
remember.
Okay.
The things I mostly remember about these films is the relationship between him and the girl, and the more I like that relationship, the more I'm likely to like the film.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed.
And the villains as well.
Not me. The villains bore me to death a lot of the times, to be honest.
Really interesting.
No, but in the sense that if you remember the villains, it also makes...
Yeah, true. But yeah, the plots are fucking incomprehensible sometimes. Like the Living Daylights, I do not know what the plan
very
is.
Convoluted. That's
What
very
the fuck
convoluted.
is going on?
I agree. It's very convoluted.
But I like that
Miguel,
one.
I mean, me and Mike, when we saw that film for the first time, was like, he does this, then he goes there to Afghanistan. Then there's this whole plot with opium and then diamonds, commercialize them, and then machine guns, warfare, and it's just a bunch of points to A to B to C. But anyway, that's a particular convoluted one. But it has other qualities as well.
Yeah, I like that one a lot, actually.
But you know what? I think that regarding Goldfinger, going back to that, what I think it's so special about Bond, particularly about Bond through the ages, being these 60 years of this action hero, the first action hero in cinema, really taking the first steps for what is going to be the blockbuster, and that is Bond. I think Marvel movies and whatever the kind owes much to the lane that Bond started to construct in the 60s, because there wasn't anything like that back then, really. But I think what's so special about Bond is that in the early days, there were really kind of low budget films starting out, and as they moved along from the first to the second to the third, they were really increasing in budget, and they're really giving also the first steps into this kind of high concept espionage world where they allow themselves to be imaginative and play with the odds, the stakes, the representation of what is this spy, also taking a lot from the books, but also reinterpreting the books and doing free adaptations. And I think in Bond, there's something that is very specific of Bond, even today, and that something is reshapen over the ages because the audience becomes more demanding, as these kind of films become greater in scope, greater in effects. And that thing that belongs to Bond is hyper-realism. I think the thing that Bond really has that's a trademark, it's hyperrealism. You have things that, in that representation of the spy, you have things like, for example, at the beginning of Goldfinger, Bond swims out the shore and comes out with a seagull on his head, which is kind of a sign of secret intelligence, which today, by today's standards, it would just be corny. But it's kind of, or for example, the way he fights Oddjob in the film, it's so tacky and so clumsy, but it's at the same time it has a sort of a very real, on the moment done
It's not
way.
just
So
Oddjob. Everyone.
everyone, or just Sean Connery running, as Mike likes to say, doesn't run very well. But those things are part of something which I think is very special of the early films, which is this hyperrealism, where they would ask you for a particular suspension of disbelief that goes the extra mile. They would ask you kind of, these are the idiosyncrasies of the earlier films, where they would kind of ask you to be a child again and to believe in the trickery of cinema. That, you know, all the backdrop projections and the seagull on his head and whatnot, the ejector seat on his car, it's something to be believed in as within the world of James Bond, which is always played between serious and funny. I think, and I think when it strikes a good balance between serious and funny, and the audience is in on it, that some things are unbelievable, but at the same time, because the character believes so much in them, we also can accept them. It's a good spot. I think, for example, when it comes to Roger Moore, the balance is completely off in some of his films. Like, it's just Roger Moore himself, the Bond, is winking at the camera because he's telling you, "See, funny, we are funny." You know, it does happen oftentimes.
I mean, the thing with the Sean Connery's James Bond is you don't really feel he's an action oriented person. You feel more like he's a suave guy that definitely does well with women, and you know, he's good in those situations where you need to be smooth and conversational. But every time you ask him to do more action stuff, I mean, it's not just in the actor; it's in the direction as well, in the choreography. I mean, as you said, it's tacky. It's slow. Often the fights are very slow. The punches are very slow. The way they fall. Um, so this is probably one of those aspects that these early films, well, we have to contend with. But yeah, when you compare it to more recent films, I mean, it's just uh, overwhelming the difference because it's so much stunt based and so much choreography. So much choreography is involved. So I mean, it was one of the more distinctive aspects that I thought was different, comparing the two films, I think.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I still, precisely because of that, asking me of the earlier films for a special kind of suspension of disbelief, because of let's say, being the early days of it, the early days of this action hero. I just accept it and believe in it, and I like to that the film is inviting me to believe this, which is so unbelievable. At the same time, I do like one thing that you said, which is Sean Connery's strongest point as Bond is his suaveness. I think a great thing that I like about these films, these earlier films of Bond, that does not happen much today, sadly, but also not sadly because it's something precious of the times, and it marks those times. So it's good that with different Bonds we get different flavors, really. But with Sean Connery, we have this thing where the action scenes, what the film is about, is within the machinations of a franchise and how it works, of course. But still, what the film is about is Bond has the character, his irony, his suaveness, his charm, his boyish flair, you know. And you have a lot of scenes in Goldfinger, as much as Dr. No and From Russia with Love and whatnot, where it's just Bond relating with other people, either foes or friends, and him showing his irony. And I love Sean Connery's acting in particular because he's top notch at representing that more than Roger or others, because he just has these sweet moments where, for example, he's bored with Q's explaining of the gadgetry and the camera travels to him and he's like, "Ugh, here we go again." It's all seen in his face. Or, for example, building up his sex appeal, and he's there right up in the beginning of the film. You have just a little scene where he's on a hotel corridor. He picks up a key from a maid, and the key's like locked to a thread that is on her waist, and he pulls her to him so he can open Goldfinger's suite, and she's like, "Oh my god, that's Goldfinger's suite!" And he's like, "I know." So it's so funny, and at the same time, of course, it's the way it's orchestrated. The key connected to the waist. It has so much to do with kind of a seductive playfulness, and he's the best at doing these things. And I remember other moments of Sean's in other films like Thunderball where he uses this irony and he jokes with people in such a funny way, and it's really, and they really take up moments, like for example his conversations with Moneypenny. You actually are seeing two people. Just he stops from M's, he comes out of from M's briefing and he's just talking with her, and it's the banter, it's the flirt, and you're seeing these two characters just existing in this room still. While, for example, in Skyfall, where they retrieve the Moneypenny character, they try to have that banter. It's fun, of course, but at the same time, I think today, by today's standards, there's a more focus not in character, not on really building Bond as what really makes up the film, but they're really more concerned with the plot must go on. I think today it's a lot about the plot. And for example, in Skyfall, they're having the banter, but they're walking along the corridor because they need to get to M's office. So it's always moving. They're never still. The camera is never there with us and still with us and focus on the moment, people talking. Another instance of this, if you see, Goldfinger has very little action sequences. It's just the car, the end battle. The rest is just people coexisting with each other. And a lovely thing I like is the golf sequence with Goldfinger. It's always about a sense of play. It's always about the sense of relation of Bond with the others and how he gets, how he comes above the, dealing with other people, dealing with Goldfinger. I love the golf sequence because, for example, one of the strong points of Casino Royale with Craig is the poker game, because the whole film, an action film, stops for people to sit down, the viewers as well, to sit down and just watch poker and just watch these people relate in this, hazy, smoke air-filled seductive casino. They're playing. It's a game of seduction, a game of who wins, kind of machismo kind of thing. Bond has this thing which is different from all the Mission Impossibles or whatever, which is its very own particular flavor for a glamour or a charm that really comes from the character. And I think it really shines through in these early films where the focus is completely on him and these down-to-earth moments. Those, to me, are the action sequences. And then, of course, you have the proper scenes like the car chase.
But what I will say is that I watched a bunch of these films, and my conclusion was almost always that the least interesting parts of the film for me were the action scenes in almost all of them. Because it's what you're saying. I do like to see the character use his wit and use his banter and do all that kind of stuff, even with the villains. And I think that's the most interesting part, especially here in Goldfinger, where I think the action scenes are just not that interesting or well done even. They're just kind
existent.
Or existent. Yeah, when they do exist, it's sort of like, it feels like we have to do it. Like, it's an action film, I guess. But I'm not a big fan of them. But this film, yeah, this is a charming. I think of all the Connery films I've seen, which was Dr. No from Russia, and then You Only Live Twice. Yeah. I think this is the only one that I really felt charmed by the character and by him as an actor. I think he really brings, a suaveness to this one that is very enchanting. He's great. And it's his best performance, I think, of all the ones I've seen.
And there's a lot of interesting camera work and within his acting and the blocking. For example, when he meets Jill Masterson, the first, let's say, Bond girl in the film that works for Goldfinger, there's this whole play once again with the relationship of him with the camera and him with the girl, the whole mise en scène about she being laying down on the beach chair and him taking her own, he takes a whole dominance over the scene and over her, because he literally takes her eyes, her binoculars, through which she was seeing the whole card game with Goldfinger, and he's having the conversation really while he's looking through the binoculars, but he's not really looking at her. He's just talking, asking her questions about her boss, um, and you see the whole language between the juxtaposition of close-ups and how Goldfinger is reacting to Bond's banter, how she is reacting to Bond's playfulness as well, and all this while he's not looking at her and he's measuring up what kind of a man Goldfinger is. And he learned two things about Bond. That he probably one big thing is that he's a man who does a job. He's determined, but while he does a job, he has fun with it. And I think that's he's doing it. He's actually doing
that's
something.
hinted a lot of times during this film. This sort of struggle to discipline himself, not to go after a girl or something.
And then that has consequences, like the girl dying later on from gold paint, which is another moment where I find that it is about these seemingly outdated things, but that actually are the very own idiosyncrasies of these earlier films that I like, which is this balance between serious and the fun, this hyper realism. You have Oddjob coming into the room, this Alfred Hitchcockian shadow, which is really not Hitchcock, because Hitchcock in his film North by Northwest essentially inspired James Bond, and Cary Grant was considered for the role of Bond in the early days. Ian Fleming, the writer, wanted him for Bond, but they got Sean Connery instead. And
oh well.
And the thing, it's one of those things that what takes a big trait in this film, what is the action sequences to me, what is so exhilarating is seeing this strangeness, these odd things happening, like this guy, you have a big hand coming into frame, which is Oddjob's hand, and giving a judo chop in Sean Connery's as he falls from the, and then you see his shadow and there's a quirky music going on, ding ding.
But even to pass out, it takes his time.
Exactly, it takes his time. And then it's the very own thought that after that, you need to think that Oddjob sit down on the bed. He knocked out Jill Masterson, put her dead, and he painted her gold while Bond was unconscious. He took an hour doing that. So it's like, and then when he wakes up, Bond, he takes it very seriously. Oh my God, cabaret dancers do this as well, but they leave a patch. And I'm like, it's got the whole fun of it. I'm like, and it's like there's a perfect balance. I'm taking it very seriously at the same time as I understand it's very funny. While, for example, Roger Moore to me doesn't do this, and I find that to be the very interesting thing with Sean's Bond.
Yeah, and that scene you mentioned with Jill. I mean, you have another example, which is the directing, shot example, which is the view of the cards of the binoculars, which is obviously not the sort of view you would get from a hotel amplified, very far away. But it's this sort of thing that you kind of go with it. These little gimmicks, and I guess it's a sign of the times as well. And for example, the hat from Oddjob that works like some sort of yes. magical cutting knife, something like that.
Yeah, I don't even know what's.
I think it's a razor in the head, like a Peaky Blinders thing.
Yeah, but when he hits the girl. Circular. Like obviously maybe it's because of censorship.
Let's not talk physics with Bond.
She doesn't it doesn't cut her head. That would be cool if it decapitated. It just like kind of knocks her. So I don't know if it's like a razor or it's just the power of his throw is so good that it like knocks her out. I think
it's a combination. It's the power of his thrust and the razor.
Plus, he doesn't look like a villain. He looks like this sweet little man.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I don't believe he wants to decapitate people and.
Yeah. But I think, and Bond has this very interesting tradition with Henchman. Bond kind of, it's a beast that feeds upon itself, right? It's something that, it goes back to its tropes, to its elements that particularly fans want to revisit fresh and new, which happens a lot in, for example, No Time to Die. And I love those particular Easter eggs, but at the same time, it wants to present them anew, like I said. So,
in a sense, the sort of blind bionic eye guy, the henchman from No Time to Die, is a bit Yeah, it's a
I mean,
bit
that's the thing that I was going to
similar.
follow up with. He
But
is,
even in the goofiness, like the
yeah, yeah,
scenes
yeah.
that present him, he always makes this face
Yes.
like with like Dwayne Johnson with the eye and the.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I even think it's too much, and that's kind of the feeling I have from old films of Bond, not the most recent one.
Mm. I like that too much. I like his, it's the over the topness. Um, I don't know. It's kind of its own language. It's contained over the topness. It's its own language. At its best, it does that. Or like when Bond discovers that he has a bionic eye, there's a shot of Bond doing like looking at his bionic eye with his pouch, and then looking at the bike. There's the bike there. I'm going to use it. It's like, but yeah, I think this No Time to Die in particular has a very good comeback of Henchman. Like Logan Ash. He has very good identifiable traits, being this prick, clean white pressed shirt, his smile, his that
Yeah,
he does with his teeth,
looks like a
or
frat boy.
yeah, or Primo, the henchman of Safin with the bionic eye. I really like him. In past films with Craig, we didn't have very much, very good henchmen like Mr. Hinks, who is the Batista inspector. Yeah, he has a good gimmick, has a presence, but he's not very well used. And beyond that, it's really No Time to Die with the henchman story.
I think that's just all my overall feelings on the Craig era is that there's a lot of good actors and ideas, but they're not well used.
Yes.
Like Leia Seydoux, I don't think her character is like the No Time to Die kind of is based around her in terms of the emotional arc depends on your relationship to that character and Craig's the Bond relationship to that character. And I don't think the character is well developed or built enough in those two films, Spectre and No Time to Die. So that's why personally it kind of falls flat a lot of the times for me.
Yes, Spectre falls flat on a lot of things. I think that's one of them. But I think No Time to Die redeems a bit the the relationship between Bond and Madeline.
Again, for me, it
Although,
didn't.
yeah, I think it's more of an emotional film rather than an emotional relationship. I think it it
That's a very good point. Yeah.
when you really think about it, I don't think there's a lot of true moments of connection that would warrant such a tragic ending, for example, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
connection that they establish. I don't think it's quite at the same level.
I think it's very over the top and doesn't really earn that
Yeah,
sentimentality unless you're like an insane fan of James Bond, maybe like Tomás. Maybe he
No, I get
connects to
it.
it more.
I get it.
But I'll still say, like, I do feel a bit sad by the end. Like, it's a bit of a cheat code because it is.
Yeah, precisely. It's what I feel. It's kind of a duality about it, because I think that, and this is common in Goldfinger and No Time to Die. I think that there's both these mistakes living. Bond doesn't seem to be able to really tie things through in the last act, in the third act. I mean, the third act of Goldfinger, there are a lot of shit going on that, a lot of cliches, a lot of mistakes. That's where the film kind of falls apart a little bit for me in some instances. No Time to Die as well. And in No Time to Die, I agree with you in the sense that Madeline is not very well developed. I think although that is true, I think No Time to Die does a better job than Spectre does in making her a little bit more interesting we see a little bit of her backstory with Safin, which is actually the thing I like best about the villain. I think the villain is extremely weak. But I think the one thing I like about him, and I think should have been explored further, is the fact that we have this very rare thing which has never been, except for Live and Let Die perhaps, which is this connection between the Bond villain and the Bond girl. The Bond villain being in love by the Bond girl, because he becomes obsessed with this idea within him that, oh, I was spared and she's going to be spared too, and I'm sparing her, so her life belongs to me. He becomes very obsessed by this idea in her head, in his own hand. It doesn't make sense, but that makes up for this kind of toxic obsession, love thing in his head. And I think do that. I mean, I'm rather much more interested in the villain that his whole plan, at least at first, comes from the fact that he wants to steal Bond's girlfriend, and he's lovingly obsessed with her. And then that spurs a whole master plan. For example, I think the Poison Garden, which is a great element that Safin has, is not well developed. That could be a really explored instead of the nanobots. That is the poison. That is the virus, whatever. And the nanobots thing, it's just, he's all over the place as a villain. He has too many pointers. He's like, first of all, he wants to. First of all, there's the relationship with Madeline, but then there's the nanobot shtick and the poison garden shtick. The nanobot shtick, he wants to presumably save the world from all the criminals, the bad people, and he's going to terminate them all in the subtext. But then he's going to sell the nanobots to some buyers, so he's kind of has commercial views. He's all over the place. And the thing with villains in this film is that, both of the like with Safin, is that they are only puring mischievous, malevolent words to be villainy, and the motivations are all kind of, ooh, like Blofeld is. I mean, I think he's better in this film in terms of presentation. His introduction, like Hannibal Lecter kind of style in the prison, is great. But the conversation itself, the whole reveal is like really lame. Like,
It's very cheap to put James. That is, the way that Blofeld dies is just sort of a.
it's so anticlimactic.
It's like James decides, oh, no, I'm getting angry. I'm gonna choke you, the die. It's like,
And it didn't feel it didn't feel like he was that angry to start choking him. I didn't
yeah,
feel that.
exactly. I mean, it felt like, okay, we need for him to touch him, so
They should
have
have
very
just like
mixed
fist
feelings.
bumped or something like that, or a high five and then he died. That would have been better.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings with that scene because I both like Craig, but at the same time, I think he's going so much over the top. And I do like his performance in this film, but that scene in particular, the interrogation, I'm like, he says things like, but then all went wrong, didn't it? His mouth goes, didn't it? And I'm like, what the fuck are you
And
doing,
there
Craig?
are
Like,
times, specifically in that scene, but across the film, where he reminds me the accent of his character in Knives Out.
really
He goes like
interesting.
low and it's
That's
true.
very
I mean,
good.
you have to, some scenes he really
I
says
mean,
that. And he was
I think,
already
yeah.
experimenting with some.
Yeah, he's already preparing.
He was doing this at the same time as Knives Out, so his mind was split between Southern and James Bond. But for example, I think I do love his performance in this film in some instances because I think there's a difference, and in most, on contrary to previous iterations where he's more few words, cold assassin. In this film, he never stops talking. He's very talky. I think he's more matured as like a person and emotionally speaking, and he's out of patience. He just want to give his opinion, which before he didn't. So in M's office, when he's kind of giving it to M, which is the thing I like in this film, is the fact that M's mistakes are center stage, and he's kind of like this boss character with authority and respect. And in this film, he has grayish tones. He has a different side to him. The whole film is about his own mistakes to save his country or to protect it, but in the end, it has serious consequences. I mean, he could be court-martialed in, because he's using bio weapons or whatever, which is not correct. So, but he'll be fine. Anyway, I love his dialogue in The Office because it breeds Phoebe Waller-Bridge. He's all. I mean, I've seen Fleabag, so the wit that he uses there, it just feels so much like.
The
God
problem
damn
is that
you,
every
Kirsty.
every scene feels like a different writer. One of the
Yeah,
many
is
that the
true.
film had.
That is true. That is
I
true.
mean, but
Yeah.
literally, you sense that in the dialogue.
Mm. But the big problem regarding these big blockbuster films and regarding the third act and being the threads being badly knitted together by the end and all, and the plot holes, a lot of plot holes in No Time to Die, is the fact that I think they're much concerned in the blockbusters. They're much more concerned with getting at a final result, a product that can be sellable and that has enough identifiable elements of personality. Okay, this is recognizable as Bond. Yes, check that. Okay, that it makes the table and it's set to launch. But then what they have in the end is very rushed aspects, both technically and narratively speaking, because in Goldfinger you would find like backdrop projections in scenes that could be easily done and shot on location, like the hotel in Miami at the beginning of the film. You see backdrop projections in moments that did you really need to shoot this in studio? Couldn't you have done this like more days? Find the time to do this right? I don't know enough information if it's either because of low budget or because they were lazy, but And then in No Time to Die,
The whole
what a
budget
plot
went to
holes.
extras falling on the ground.
Falling on the ground, yes.
Oh.
Kentucky.
You know, yeah. In No Time to Die, you have the weak villain's motivation. You know, the whole fact that the nanobots, I don't buy that Q says, oh, nanobots are just for Christmas. You can't take them out. Really? Are we really going to give up? Because you can really see through it that you say that because you want to condemn the hero when the time comes.
Yeah.
And
nothing we can
that's
do
why-
about it.
That's why the ending feels forced, because it's so forced to say that there's nothing you can do about it. And not only on top of that, you shot Bond to death. You put poison on him.
I mean,
And it's
something like that, like nanobots that go into your blood. I mean, I can imagine that you might not be able to take them out. But the way they present this information, it's like
I don't know,
it's preparing people for the ending.
It just feels like
a
they didn't
stake
even
is
try
raising.
it. They didn't even try to find
They
a
didn't even try.
solution. It's
No,
like,
no,
nah,
no,
you're
it's
done.
just-
You're done, mate.
Exactly. That's the thing I don't like about it.
Like, and they have some insane gadgets. Like, you can try. I'm sure you could try something, but still, yeah, I don't know.
A magic lollipop that he can suck, and then all the nanobots focus on the lollipop.
Put him in a put him in a hazmat.
We're in the hazmat. Just, I don't know.
Bubble boy.
Yeah, but I think the main problem really is the villain. I mean, we don't know what he wants. We don't know how he feels with Madeline, if he feels close to her or not. And then her daughter. I mean, he's holding on to her, but then it's just like, oh, if you wanna go, just go.
Oh man, don't start me on that. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ! It's
Like, what was the point of all that?
What was the point?
He wanted a
it's so-
friend.
I can't believe that the film did that, because it's so much. It's like you can see the writers in a room saying, "Well, we don't know what to do with this, so we are just going to be easy about it. We're just going to make him leave the daughter, and she's going to run. It's so easy. Like she runs
hey, here I
and
am.
finds her parents. Yeah, here I am. And, it's
And even
so easy.
the two
Like,
henchmen that are behind him keep looking at him like, "Are you sure you want to do this, man?"
The fuck?
Even they are questioning, like, are you serious right now?
What the fuck?
Jesus Christ. But then, for example, strong points in No Time to Die. I really like the editing for the action sequences. I think the music of Hans Zimmer, although it's not very identifiable as much as Skyfall music is, has separate from the film, it is identifiable within the more I watch the film, the more I am in love with the music and the soundscape within the action sequences, because it really cuts to the raw sounds. If you really notice it, every cut cuts to a specific sound, the roar of an engine, the shot of a grappling hook, for example. And that within the fast-paced blocking of the actors with, there's a lot of fast panning in the film, which I love. And it's great. It's kind of another approach to action sequences that is different from Skyfall, for example, where the action sequences, the exciting, gripping thing about them is that there's a challenging of expectations, where Bond is just surpassing over and over an obstacle that becomes worse and worse. Like in the opening of Skyfall, you have the chase with the bike, and then the chase on top of the plane, the fight on top of the plane, then the train, and then the train comes to a height and he gets killed and fallen. What has happened to Bond? It's like this whole surpassing of obstacle upon obstacle, and here is much more the mechanics of the editing, which I love. In Goldfinger, the car chase sequence, which is also with the DB5, and I love the fact that they updated the DB5 chase sequence in this film, in No Time to Die, because it's so well made. The aerial shots, the traveling shots with the nose of the car coming in close, spearing through crowds, spearing through the traffic. I love how the film plays with elements, the haze, the fog in the forest, like the water of the cars running through rivers, and just the scraping of metal with the car, the donut. It has a lot of imagination. Unfortunately, of course, because of the earlier films, it's an aspect that is not so much well achieved in the earlier films, because the effects were others at the time. You don't have these, taking the potential of it further. You have a lot of still shots, a lot of car mounts on people's reactions, and Bond reacting to the henchman behind them. But one thing that is good for sure for me is that the editing of the action sequences is well knitted enough that I can appreciate the car chase sequence within Goldfinger, for example. And also, a thing that connects these blockbusters is the wide shots. They really rely a lot on the wide shots to introduce big like opening sequences to introduce spaces, the width of the sets of built by Ken Adams in the early 60s. And of course, Safin's lair is directly lifted from, for example, You Only Live Twice, kind of grandeur of the volcano lair, the minimalism of Ken Adams with Fort Knox kind of aesthetic. I love that. I love that the scope that they allow it. For example, you have also M's briefing of Bond's mission is split in two in Goldfinger. They go to the Minister of Foreign Affairs' home, which is like this grandiose mansion with candlelight dinner.
Isn't
And it's
that like
beautiful.
the bank boss?
Yeah, is it? I think it was Minister of Foreign Affairs talking about, exposition about Goldfinger. I'm not sure. Remember. But the fact that the filmmakers were conscious that we need to reveal more of this world, the layers of it, and the politics behind them, and the people that are on about this Goldfinger guy. They could have done the exposition, the whole of it, in M's office, but decided to split in two and enrich the world of Bond, the scope of it. I think it's beautiful. It's something that really gets my Bond fan in me all giddy. It's just amazing. It's just yummy.
I mean, and Goldfinger, I mean, is built around a good villain with interesting
Exactly.
motivations
Yes.
and a very clever plan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it can endure a lot of non-action scenes, and
And he has such a
and it lives
charisma.
well within this way
Yeah.
of doing the jumping between scenes. Whereas No Time to Die doesn't do this well because the plan,
And the villain
It's
is
all
not
over the
yeah, and the
place.
good.
villain.
And the thing is, Safin is a legitimate. I'm so sad because it's a pity. Because it's like I was saying to Leo just earlier, is that the structure is there, the elements are there. They really have good elements in there. That they are just the starting point of the idea. That's what happens in the film. It's just the starting point of the idea. It's like the first or second draft that they pick up, and they don't develop it further. Because the tie-in with Madeline, the relationship with Madeline, I love that opening where he looks at Madeline behind the ice. It's so specific, so specific. It's well directed. That moment, you have the music, and I'm like, oh my god, it's amazing. He's seeing her beneath the ice, and he's building this relationship. His own death of the family. He feels like a lonely child, and she's a lonely child. And okay, this can be developed further. This is kind of picked up upon later on in the film, but it's just not developed enough. And this could be the center frame of the villain, the center frame, guys, the center frame writers.
He could be a
and they
very
don't do it.
emotionally complex
Yes,
and interesting
yes,
guy
yes.
where you feel kind of
But the
bad
thing
for him
is-
and feel for him.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, he's just
But
like,
the-
oh, fuck it. The world is gonna die.
you know how I feel. I feel like I just wanna. There's so much legitimately good ideas in the script. They're just not well developed. That I just feel like writing my own script about it. I just want to pick it up and do my own rendition and say, here, this is what should have happened. I actually had this discussion with Mike after seeing the film. We should make our own script of No Time to Die, like the other version.
And then there's like Rami Malek's performance. Like, what is he doing?
I don't know. I think he has his
Why
moments.
is he acting
Yeah,
this
no.
way?
It's a no for me. It's a no
It's
for
a
me.
no. It's a no. Okay.
It's too much. I think it starts well when it's just his voice.
Uh-huh.
There's scenes where before he's introduced. I don't remember when it is. Or rather, it's okay. So the first scene is, I think, you don't really get to see that acting sort of him because it just comes to the house to shoot the mother. But afterwards, you only see his voice, and I think it's more interesting in acting there because you don't really see all the things that he's doing with his face and just too much. It's like a performance.
I understand why they cast him. Like, he has a strange face, like for a villain, kind of works. But I think he's too weird looking for this role a little bit. And they put the makeup on.
Yeah.
It's like you're going way over the top for a character that I think should be more humanized and should be
Yes.
more put on a.
Just look at Goldfinger. He's just a normal
He's
dude,
just a guy.
normal
Like,
fat
I would
person.
never want to see Bond and the Rami Malek guy play golf together, you know. But the
Yeah.
Goldfinger guy is cool. Like, that's fun. It's a it's a
and-
great scene.
With his little Japanese robe.
And Goldfinger has that amazing, really tense scene where James Bond is stuck to the table with a laser, and that sort of tension, you never get that with No Time to Die. And yet it's such a simple scene. And even them speaking is extremely simple, like just an exchange of, you don't know nothing, I do know, sort of a bluff, and yet it's a very good score as well. But nonetheless, it's like bringing this simplicity to life.
Goldfinger just has the charisma, man. He just has something. He's
The
able
voice,
to riff.
the eyes, man.
He's able to riff with Bond.
Yeah.
He's great.
And the
You expect me to
filmmaking
talk?
follows that. I feel like
Yeah.
the filmmaking is also has a lot of character in the film in general has a lot of character and a lot of charm that I feel like it's a perfect. I understand why Goldfinger is probably used as like the perfect Bond film for a lot of people, or the one that encapsulates a lot of the.
It was the
what's
first one
charming.
who really attained the formula. It became a cultural phenomenon by then, and it really has a lot of first things like the Aston Martin DB5. Aston Martin becomes a staple of a brand for Bond, particularly DB5 as his classic car. You have Q coming in, I think, for his second time. Desmond Llewellyn is my Q, in my opinion. I like Wishaw in the role of Q in these later films, but I really like Desmond, and it's just a lot of identifiable kind of trope things. The briefing with them, yeah, the third act kind of explosion and everything.
I don't know. I personally I find those kind of boring, but I understand why people like them. I think Q is a boring character in all the films. I think the M briefings are boring.
Jesus.
Get on with it. I don't
I'm
care.
killing-
I want to see Bond just Bond around. Like this is why On Her Majesty's Secret Service is very good. Like the first half of the film, it's just him, on a beach and then vibing
in Portugal.
In Portugal, yeah, that was very cool. He saves
He
the
was married
girl.
in Portugal.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I think you were talking
And
about.
by the way, just a note: No Time
say.
to Die lifts a lot from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. If you notice, the music is there. Even Louis Armstrong is in the score by the end of it. All that we have all the time in the world is directly lifted from Her Majesty's Secret Service. They're well aware of the emotional tie-in with.
I feel like that film is the On Her Majesty is probably the one has a lot of impact in filmmaking or in terms of the intentions of the modern Craig films.
Yeah, and it's visually stunning. And the director is Peter Hunt, which is the editor of Goldfinger. He was the editor in previous Bond films, so it's quite funny to see the progression in the.
I was watching the Goldfinger, the credit scenes, which is I really like that one. And I saw Peter Hunt. Oh, there he is.
Yeah,
the little man.
And it's the first song. It's actually the first Bond song ever. The other two films have
That's
like
one of the better ones.
But it's great. I really like.
Very good.
To No Time to Die's credit, I really like Billie Eilish's song.
Yes,
and I like Goldfinger. I love this is the thing I love about Bond as well. Is the opening credits, the title sequence. The fact that it gives time to present it in a very classy way with the music and the design. I just love it. It's so relaxing to watch a Bond film, and that's the feeling I get from watching a Bond film. Is the relaxation I get from.
I like that too. It's a good setup for the film. It's like yeah. Sets the mood.
Mm-hmm. And you see a lot about the story. It's like little hints of what the elements in the story will be, what it will be about. The virus.
Mission Impossible thought about that and said, "Let's just spoil the film in the credits."
Yeah, fuck
let's just show a little bit. Let's spoil everything.
Yeah.
I respect that.
Spoil everything. Tipo, faces from the past. What? Tipo, there's just no time to really no time to die. I think it's the contrary.
Time to die.
Time to die. And I really like when they say the name of the film. I just see Peter Griffin saying, they said it, they said it. Like in this, you have Nomi, the other character, the Bond girl, which I kind of like her.
But she says it's time to die.
It's time to die. But it's good
close
enough.
Close enough.
And there's this really interesting scene where Bond is leaving the sub pen, and he does the barrel shot.
Oh my god!
But it's like in the actual film. It's very interesting. Because I don't think that was ever done. Actually,
no.
Including
very meta.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
So amazing. I was like, oh my god, amazing, loved it. And another scene I like to redeem like Sefin a bit. Yes, Rami has questionable choices, but at the same time, for example, on the thread of that thing, I think the film should have developed, which is a relationship of Sefin with Madeline, which I think is the most developed thing of the least developed things about him in the film, and could even then could have gone further. I really like the therapy scene between Sefin and Madeline and the way that it's shot because it's one of the fewer scenes where it's very still. It's like these medium shots. There are point of view made between him and her, and it's just very silent, no music, and it just focus on the acting, and they really give room for the acting to breathe. And I think it's very well made. The play with between them, what he wants from her, her discovering that him is a figure of the past. Although it's very questionable because he never aged, but fine, they are
Yes,
close to the same
yes,
age.
exactly.
But I think that scene is a golden nugget in the film between the two for me. I think his acting really shines through. I don't know what you think, but I liked
I
it.
mean, I like in the beginning, but then he gets all psycho mode. Like,
Yeah, he's
like
too psycho.
why? And then before the actual scene, Madeline's going up the stairs, and a colleague of hers says, "Oh, he's kind of weird," and she says, "Oh, don't say that. It's whatever." She says something else. It's like that's how you want to hint that that he might be something.
Well, but she's right. You don't say that about a patient.
No,
We
no,
know
but
that he's weird, particularly. But
no, but the fact that they need to include that at all, it's like,
no, I think it's
what did that
natural.
add to the? Okay, that's
I think it's
maybe something
natural.
a colleague might say, and you
Uh,
reprimand her.
yeah, that's the actual thing with me. Is that these films are all about plot. These later films, and there are no moments of just release and relief. Like in the earlier films, you have just Bond being around, the golf scene, the being with Moneypenny, the Kentucky moments where he's just there lying around talking with Goldfinger. You don't have that anymore. So whenever a scene just comes up, there is just a little mundane thing, which is it's really the word, the love for the mundane. It's lost in these later films where the plot just needs to go along. It's just jumping from A to B.
I think Skyfall does that a lot, actually. I think there are a lot of moments of connection between Bond and Silva, where it feels like the old films where they just take
Actually,
a break
Silva,
and
I think Silva is the Bond villain for Craig, like the one you remember, because his introduction is so good with the long shot and the
It's
traveling forward.
great. The
It's
rats.
great. The rat you remember the rat analogy, It's so great, great. It's gonna
you
be a
feel
memorable
like that
villain.
scene where they're talking and perhaps even the other one outside where he's shooting the apple from
Oh
the.
yeah, yeah. It's an
It
iconic
feels very
scene.
much like a
Iconic scene.
Goldfinger's golf scene,
Oh yeah, yeah,
the way
yeah.
they interact.
Yeah, and even Moneypenny, the way they to redeem this kind of the bond of the moment being lacking in mundane things. The scene where he's being shaven by Moneypenny is a moment of release where we're not completely focused on the plot while we're talking about it, but you're building the characters' rapport, and that's interesting.
Yeah. But what I was gonna say is that there's like a paradox or a contradictory nature, which is the earlier films they didn't really explore Bond, like his complexities and this like, oh, I'm feeling like he didn't feel bad. It's like he didn't really have feelings beyond the mission and fucking those girls, and that's all that he cares about. Whereas the Craig films are being more, exploring a different side of the character, being more critical of his, not critic, but like exploring the emotional toll that it might have
Yeah,
on
a
a person.
vulnerability, I would say that's the word in Craig. I
A
think that's a
psychotic
win.
one, but it's there.
I think that's a win that you get with Craig is that there is a vulnerability to his characters, particularly present in Casino Royale, which I think is both emotional and physical. And I really like about throughout this tenure, you see that very much, which you don't see with Sean's, because Sean is all about surviving at all costs. He's always there. He always will come
But
above.
I also feel like what they set up with Casino Royale, which I think is the best one, uh, it kind of goes downhill from there. They kind of just, it's not really explored. I don't know. Like I watched Casino Royale, it's about the guy. It's the how he becomes Bond, right? How he becomes this essentially a tool for the
Yeah,
state to
by the
kill
end,
people. And
he
he's dead.
says
Like
the
he's
line.
like, yeah, the bitch is dead. He's like, yeah, he says the line. Like he's been beaten down. Everything he loves, the girl he loves died in front of him, betrayed him. He thinks, and then finds out that didn't. Uh, all this shit. But then the rest of the films, the rest of the franchise, is going back to like trying to humanize him and showing the complexities of the character. I feel like Casino Royale already did everything within a single film, and and then the rest of the franchise is sort of retreading the same ideas
Of
and
the first,
of the
in terms
first.
of the vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly, and how he becomes this emotional thing, tool, killing
Yeah,
object. I don't know. I don't think like. Yeah, I don't know. I understand.
I think that's interesting because I think it's one of the problems of the Craig era where they bet on a bigger continuity between films, which in theory is good because it does provide all these elements of recurring villains and bigger stories. But yeah, I think that's one of what you just said is a big con of the fact that you have such continuity between films is that when you have such a strong film like Casino Royale, and then you feel the need to continue with different stories and different villains, you're kind of stuck into what you've just did in the previous film. And how can you top something like that? Knowing that you have to continue the stories, so it's not like you're starting from anew, and you can build new villains and a new, perhaps even tone of the film. You're kind of stuck to the fact that you have stories continuing and arcs continuing.
Yeah, agree. It's too much of a cinematic universe. I don't like that. Like I like the singular nature of the Bond films a lot of the times.
interesting.
But it's
Yeah,
a
I get what
sin
you
of
mean.
having, but all this because you had such a good first film, I think,
Oh yeah, definitely.
rather than the fact that you have continuing set of films is a bad thing in theory. I don't think it's necessarily that.
I
But
mean,
Casino Royale was
yeah.
just too good a film.
The you know what the mistake is. The thing is they half-ass it. They don't commit to it, and that's the problem from the very beginning. Is that they have good ideas, they have good structure. All the films can, in all the films, good ideas can be found, lovely things, but they don't explore them to the fullest of their potential. The same goes with the continuity aspect. I think it's very interesting that they decided to, okay, it's a staple of Bond that there is this spiritual continuity of sorts, that it's not kind of straight and we different actors come in of different ages, so it cannot be the same guy. But at the same time, you can tell, and they leave hints that from 1962 to 2002, the last film with Pierce Brosnan, it is the same guy. And then 2006, Casino Royale, which is the very first Bond book and Bond film of the reboot, reinitiates the whole thing. And I think it was interesting that they gave themselves the leeway to, okay, let's tell a whole story with an arc where there's this continuity with this character. I appreciate the moments where he's vulnerable throughout. I like that as a theme throughout. The real problem here is, I think, they didn't draft a plan for a 5-film stage. And there's a lot of things that they really want to commit to in No Time to Die that will really depend on those things being developed over 5 films in the subtext behind in the subtext behind the scenes, which weren't. Like, for example, the Vesper thing, I think it was long gone and buried. The fact that Madeline at the start says you need to let her go, you need to go to the grave. First off,
Like,
why? I thought
what?
this thing was dealt with.
Yeah,
Why does it need to go
exactly.
to the grave? And then the fact that Blofeld, this is a huge plot hole for me, and why the conversation in the prison doesn't work. Blofeld says, I'm trying to imitate Christoph Waltz. She led you there because of the goodness of her heart. And first off, Blofeld Waltz, your whole scheme depended upon Madeline suggesting that he went to the grave and that them two went to Matera in the first place. Like, that's a whole stretch.
I think
How?
that's the worst
And
part
then,
actually. It's
the,
that
the,
they're there at the same time that they need to work past these things.
yeah,
Like I mean, it's not even something we think about. But I mean, the two things are not connected. That
not
this is a
cohesive.
coincidence. I
Not
mean, that
cohesive
they're there.
at all. I don't know.
dealing with
It's
this, and that
there's so many
Blofeld
things
wants
built
that.
into the situation of the Matera sequence, which, by the way, I think it's one of the most beautiful opening sequences in the franchise. In this film, it's the longest actually because it's big. It's a dream flashback, and then goes to the present. But it's great, amazing visually. The whole film, really. That's another point. But I think that. Yeah, it's the whole thing's a lot of elements built into it. The Blofeld scheme, Madeline suggesting this, and then it doesn't make absolute no sense. He gets there. How would he predict that? Then he would blame Madeline for it, and then she legitimately seems to care for him, but he just. I think by the end he believes that it wasn't her fault, but they just separate because he doesn't want to risk having her die on his arms. And I legitimately like the later on scene where they get reunited in Madeline's home, and I really feel his speech. I'm really touched by it, and that's where I think the performance works far beyond whatever the script can give in terms of emotional exploration. Because they are legitimately good actors. At times, they can make the script live long past what is written on the page. Which doesn't redeem
Yes,
the fact that
and it has good pieces of dialogue,
yes,
here and
yes,
there, good lines. I mean,
yeah, I think it has
it's
one of
more
the
the overall
yeah,
structure of
and
the
the film
thing, I think.
suffers a lot from badly made like exposition, very heavy exposition. Five people's in the same room, talking. Like for example, the scene where the nanobot shit is explained by Nomi, who went to a funeral of a Spectre agent and noticed that it contaminates other people within the same DNA. That whole thing, which is a reference to Thunderball, by the way, the opening scene with the funeral, that whole thing could be done. You could be watching Nomi going to the funeral, doing these things, and talking with headquarters while doing this exposition. And could be a whole mystery kind of espionage thing. Instead, we get five people in the same room, some quips about her double O code being, taken by a bond. Double O what? Double O what? And I'm like, this whole scene is so boring. This whole scene is so uninventive, and I think the film is kind of exposition heavy. Then, when he gets to London, for example, there's a lot of Bond going back and forth between dialogue scenes. Like he goes to Q's house, he goes to prison, he goes to M again, he goes away from. There's a lot of this and that, like jumping from A to B to from conversations. I just feel this could have been dealt in a different way. With, for example, that scene with Nomi going to the funeral, like bumping the stakes, bumping the curiosity, the mystery, the on action charisma. But no, they kind of get really stale by then. They became like uninventive at that middle point in the film. I don't know what you think.
Too many exposition scenes back to back. After the first half is pretty decent. I think it's good. I like
Yeah, actually,
the Cuba sequence is
oh,
really
the Cuba
cool.
scene is amazing. The action scene is amazing. The real problems for me start getting in by the third act. Really, when with there's usually the reveal of the Plansville and everything, and it just the mistakes become unavoidable by then. I think just so many piled together, and it affects the whole film behind it.
I don't know. I think there's something bigger here. I think the film just isn't that cool.
That
It, it
cool.
it's like it's trying to do a lot of things and please a lot of people, and then there's also the problem of you feeling, you really feeling that that like the film had a lot of writers, so there's shifts in tone, I think, often, and the dialogue itself, you feel like certain quips. Sometimes there are such good lines that you feel like, okay, someone clearly was the one responsible for this one here, because it just doesn't fit the overall scene in quality terms.
Yeah.
Uh, and and then there's the character of Nomi, as you say. We could have seen her do more stuff, but she always feels like the one that is a new 007. There's sort of this childish clash between them, and then they get over it because she decides, okay, you can have the number back. Okay, great. Like,
Yeah, I feel the
why
same
did
way.
you decide this? Because Bond is gonna die. Whatever. I mean, the decision came before he died, so it literally was so that he could die as a 007.
Uh-huh.
There was no reason why she would have given the number at that time.
Were you expecting him to die when you saw the film for the first time?
No, I'm saying this in hindsight. That's clearly
hindsight,
the only
okay.
reason. At
No,
the time,
I'm
okay, she
legitimately
decides to be.
asking, what did you thought? Well, Lel already knew it, but I didn't knew, and I was flabbergasted when I saw that happen. My literal reaction was,
Oh my god.
it's like
There was
freeze framed.
there was a certain time where I got yeah, understood what they were going to do. I think it was when he was all alone and the things were closing, and it kind of felt like there was something there. And then when that thing reopened, I was like, okay, yeah, he's gonna go
You
back
think?
and something's gonna go wrong.
Oh my god.
And then when he gets shot, like James Bond getting
Oh
shot
yeah,
in the third act,
that's
like
when you know. That's when you know that. Oh my god, no. That was when I was like, no way, no way, no, don't do this to me.
yeah.
Shot that, and
But I
then
think,
he gets
but
pricked, and I'm like, oh my fucking god, no. Anyway,
but even so, I think they overdid it because the ending just feels the real ending, like or rather his ending, like going up and then looking at the sky. I think that's a bit too much.
I don't think they needed
Visually,
to
it's
show
like
him like getting fucking blasted. You could have cut
visually it
early.
becomes kind of soap opera. I don't know if you
Yeah,
got this as
agreed.
well. There's this close up suddenly of his face, like looking kind of emotional. It's like,
I mean, I can
So,
get your points. I understand it, but I don't know. It touches me.
and the general thing of him going up to see the sky is like,
Só
I'm
faltava tipo
here.
pôr-se de joelhos.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I can understand that, but I don't know. Me as a Bond fan, I get that he wants to, get out there and see and be with the world. I would do that. I wouldn't be stuck in that bunker. I want to breathe the air and just
curl up
face
and
it.
cry, bitch.
I'll curl up and cry. You know, I wanna see the world one last time. I get the point. But fine. I mean, I can understand
Fine.
the form of it. Like,
Yeah, no, I thought it was a bit much, personally.
Yeah, that's it. A film, I think, sometimes becomes prisoner of needing to be emotional, and that comes out here and there, I think.
I mean, there's
But mostly
certainly
in the
an
end.
emotional manipulation. I feel emotionally manipulated by that ending because it's not deserved. Because precisely because of that nanobot question of Q saying it's not solvable, and the villain being weak doesn't help because it's like you're losing to this guy. This guy is the ultimate Bond villain. Come on, man. Like he could be. He has material for it. Like he has potential for inner conflict, but you haven't really developed it. And it's so messed up. It's just a shame. It's a whole shame that you couldn't have done this better in the writing. And it's like these people, it's like they talk about the film, how it's emotional, compelling, and in some ways, yes, but then you didn't develop it enough. It's just this, when they come to the interviews and the selling of it, I'm like, in the market, in the press junket, I'm like, is it though? You could have gone further. Some elements, yes, but you could have gone further with it.
And it's already long as it is, so it's like
Yeah, 3 hours.
clearly there was room to redo
Yes.
things
Mm-hmm.
because you clearly had the time to.
And I think there was another. I think the film you had another film here going on, because there are times in this film where I see people mouthing lines that aren't there. Like there's a moment with Safin and Madeline where he's talking about, you bore the child of an assassin despite his rejection, and then they have this little moment in the lair where they talk about how dissimilar or similar they are. And there's a moment where it cuts to her, and quite often in films today they do this, where because in this shot reverse shot situation, when they cut to a person that becomes the center frame of the shot, and you have the other person is just over the shoulder, your eyes are focused on the eyes and the mouth of the person who is the center frame of the shot. But if I drive my attention to the one that is over the shoulder, I can see Safin mouthing something. So I think he had another evil scheme. There was something other in the whole thing, something to do maybe with the Poison Garden. I don't know. The Poison Garden just seems something with so much potential. It's his whole family shtick that, there's the whole scene around the garden as well that is so lovely, I think, with the kid and the menace of it. by the way, the fact that Bond has a child in this film, a family, I think is such a subversion for the character that I find interesting. That, for example, the fact, going back to the fact that the early films have mundane scenes, I like the fact that he's making breakfast to her. And that scene could be much longer, before the whole action kicks in and the plot must go on. It's just so compressed, and I would much rather like a whole meal with Bond, a little, casserole, some rice to go with it, want some meat, and it's just a real family moment. That's new, that's brand new, never seen in the Bond franchise. That would be interesting to see. But I really like the idea of the daughter, and it's so sweet. It just because it's naturally he just met the kid, and whenever you have time to really develop just a little bit their relationship, that will be the moment. And I think it wasn't really picked up. It was only slightly. The fact is that these people, the writers, the producers, seemingly they content themselves with little things, that, yes, they're the beginning of good ideas, but you don't go further with them. And anyway, Safin, I think he had another plan. I think there was something else, and that keeps up in my shame that
And with so many writers, it doesn't surprise me that there was another film here.
5 writers, guys, 5 writers. Just and the thing is, they went on to shoot, the film, and while filming, to still have the script going on, the writing going on. So that's not the right, which clearly states one thing, that the priority is more like at arriving at that final product to sell, to audiences, instead of having a good film, a solid, all in all, solid film.
I think it was also, a victim of having to deal with being the last film and, in a sense, wanting to raise these stakes by killing Bond. So there was this second film happening, which I think was the goodbye. There was the normal action Bond film, and there was the goodbye, farewell to Craig Bond film. And coupling these two, I think, was the hardest task and probably where it failed. Because it has a lot of characters, this film. And there's also Felix, which dies, so a lot of things happening and a lot of directions to go. Blofeld reappearing, Bond and his family.
It's too much.
I actually felt the orchestration with Spectre was between Spectre and Safin was well made, and the intentions of Safin, his plan towards Spectre, the fact there was another villain in the background trying to move above Spectre's own plan, because they needed to tie the knot on Spectre's intentions from the last film. Spectre was so badly portrayed in the last film that the opening with this film, with Spectre actually being a threat, a phantom, was, I saw that on the cinema and I was like, yes, this is it, this is Spectre, we are back, 1960s Sean Connery Spectre action. And I was so happy that it was a menace. We had this henchman with the eye, and then he was saying, Madeline is a daughter of Spectre. And I'm like, yes, let's go. And Blofeld, and it was amazing. I was thrilled. And then they really got it to be a threat, which in Spectre, the film, it was so numbed out. And I think that was the best accolades of the film. And I think how Safin acted upon Spectre's own plan of killing Bond, which in itself, it's a controversy, because Blofeld says, I never want to kill you. I want to give you an empty world. So which is it? You tried to kill him in Cuba. Anyway. And so there's a lot of
the fact that Spectre was such an underwhelming film is also a problem on this one, because it stretched the narratives into this film. The fact that in the beginning of No Time to Die, Madeline and James are close, but then it kind of feels like she betrayed him, so they kind of split, and then they have to get back together. If that was done right, all of those things would have happened in Spectre, better. To a point where in the beginning of No Time to Die, they're just very close, and the whole thing is about this global, huge threat that threatens also his life with Madeline and his family. And so it just goes from there into how do they deal with being together against this guy. But no, the film goes beyond that. They are together, and then there's the threat, and then they become together again. So it's too much to deal with, I think, in the film, and that's why the film splits into these two things. Whereas it could have been a more solid effort.
It should have been, if these two things, Spectre and Safin, in it. I think it's just a matter of, it could have been written better. If it was written better, I think that actually those are two things that are, for me, rightly balanced. I like the fact that Spectre continues on, but it stops being rightly balanced, I think, when it comes to Cuba. And there's this whole thing, who done it, who is working for whom, because there's the Primo, the henchman with bionic eyes, stops working for. He's working for Blofeld, then he works for Safin, and it's hinted in the film the change, but it's a little in the background. And then Oberchev, a big plot hole for me is that Oberchev is being interrogated by Blofeld in the boat with Felix, and then Bond is trying to look for the snitch who knew that he was in Cuba, and then Oberchev looks at Logan like he's working for Blofeld, but we both know that
His
Logan is
character
working
is
for
so
Safin.
stupid.
It's so
It's
strange.
like I'm sick of these characters that are supposed to be intelligent. Like he's a fucking scientist, like huge, in a huge company working on this huge weapons sort of thing. Like he's a smart person, and then all he does is stupid things, and he talks in a stupid way. Like when he's about to die, he's like, "Oh, you don't. Safin is going to win, and yeah, what are you doing here?" And then just give him an excuse to be pushed into the water. It's like, why are you so stupid at this time where you clearly are not? You do not have the upper hand, and
I
you,
think,
and you do the stupid thing of arguing
yeah,
with Nomi. It's like
I
such
just
a
think
stupid person.
I realize that a lot of the things you don't like about it, I like. I think, tipo, I like that Oberchev is a silly guy because
Yeah,
I
I like
just
that
accept
too.
it. It's part of Bond's charm. It has this over the
I mean,
top.
there are times that it works, but I think when you clearly shouldn't, it doesn't make sense
I don't know. I think there are a lot. There's scientists who are stupid. They're good at science, but like they're dumb guys too.
And he's an asshole, and he's a prick, and he's awkwardly socially awkward. I don't know. Of course, he's a made up character. He has all
As
the
well.
all the things of being fake. You know, he's too much. He's over the top. But that's kind of the charm for me.
I don't know. I guess I was a little annoyed
Annoyed.
He's
by
annoying.
Oberchev.
Fair enough. Fair
He's
enough.
annoying.
Fair enough. He's annoying. He can be.
But the main thing was the death scene, because it's another example of how characters dying and other moments like these feel like excuses for other things, and it's like it's never warranted. Things just happen, and a couple of lines seem to be enough when they shouldn't. And that was annoying because of that, because it felt like, okay, we need to dispose of him, so let's just have him be silly again, and so Nomi can push him and say a cool line. There are other moments where it feels like it would have been earned, but here I don't think so. But yeah, anyway. I mean, we could go back to Goldfinger because we were talking about that scene where they all faint, and even
Oh
though
yeah, that scene is really funny.
yeah, in hindsight, it was a theater sort of act. I mean, that's how I interpreted that. They were all faking it.
But
Were they? I don't.
I mean,
That's not the
I
impression
didn't.
I
No,
got.
I don't think so. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's a plot hole. I mean, that's one of the problems I have with the third act in Goldfinger. He says the nerve gas puts you to sleep 24 hours, but then Felix Leiter seemingly is put to sleep, the CIA friend of Bond. But then he wakes up.
Yeah, but he
Conveniently,
says
it's
that Pussy Galore helped them switch the cans
switch the cans to what? What cans? The
to
nerve gas
nothing,
cans.
to nothing, and they were like acting so that then they could wake up.
For me,
And
that's a problem built upon a problem because the relationship with Pussy Galore, I hate it.
Yes, but that's I think the bigger plot hole is how quickly
The
Pussy Galore
switch,
changes. Yeah.
yes, the switch doesn't make sense at all. They don't, their loving relationship that they want to get with him too doesn't happen. I don't believe it. I think he's quite rapey.
I mean,
So-
quite rapey is being like
Like,
soft.
you know?
He practically rapes her. Like,
Yes, it's like
It's really strange.
but her whole attitude, the way to write her by that point is just like the whole way to justify the scene is like, oh, you have to be nice, so the CIA guy is looking out for Bond to believe that he's okay. Fine, I guess.
Right.
But they go to a barn and they start. The whole thing about it is that, oh, Pushy, you also know judo, and so that's the way for them starting to get all friendly and.
But that scene, even the sound guys were in on it, because it feels so childish, because even when they sort of grab each other and then flip, there's these sound effects like
Yeah.
where it feels like it's just a normal playful thing, but then he rapes her. It's like, no, this is not
They were
the same
in
thing.
the cut room with the moviola, and they were
They were like,
asking themselves,
wait a minute, what is happening here?
what is happening here? Wait, like Albert,
Guy?
Broccoli, the producer, Albie, Harry, maybe we should do something. Put a little bit of music in there. It will help. It will
Of course,
help.
you hear those sound effects and you think, oh yeah, yeah, they are in love. He's just
Yeah.
he wants it, yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
want
he
to-
But
wants it.
no, I mean,
This is how you love. This is how I love.
He's so bad in that. Jesus.
Jesus, yeah. They could have cut that scene.
And there are other things I have an issue with. The way he escapes prison is so stupid. Like he smiles at the Jap guy.
I
when he
like that. That's cool.
They like
That's awesome.
it is funny, but it's the moment where the balance between taking it seriously, the
That's
funny,
really cool.
it goes away, and it's just stupid fun.
well, which scene? The prison.
Where he's like,
like-
looking through the little door, the little window, and he's like smiling. Like,
Mouse goes away.
Yeah,
keeps
that,
looking
that
at.
was really funny.
So
Did he
good.
really went away? What happened? I imagine the prison guard, just thinking, "Oh my God, I can't believe Bond went all Shawshank Redemption on me, and he has a hole in there."
I think for me, it's like that would work. It's funny. I mean, because it's like he's preparing the guard to then disappear, like in out, then just out. Like, what?
And then it's like the whole thing of Goldfinger explaining his evil Grand Slam scheme to the gangsters, which are annoying guys, by the way. Hey, what's going on? What is this? A merry-go-round? It's
That
just like,
scene, I felt like they dubbed it afterwards. That's the one I felt that where James overhears about Operation Grand Slam. It felt like an overdubbing.
especially on the guys, on the Goldfinger, you see his mouth. There are other moments where in the film where Goldfinger is supposedly talking, but he isn't talking. I don't know if you noticed, but it happens.
Isn't the whole character dubbed though? Isn't that?
Yeah, dubbed he is. He didn't speak English. And it's just that whole scene is just so Bond can hear the plan through the module, through the thingy thing, the Fort Knox like plan.
But that's cool.
And,
You see his eyes through the windows, right?
Yeah, it's a cool thing, but
Really.
it's then he kills the gangsters, Goldfinger. It was for nothing. It's just for for Bond to know the plan and to further the plot along. I don't know. It seemed.
I mean, yeah, it's not great, but like that's pretty much all the Bond films have that dumb stuff. I feel like.
I don't know, but this was pretty dumb. Like throughout the film, I was pretty okay. There was nothing dumb to me, like or exceedingly dumb in Goldfinger until that third act where some things become glaringly like what was like if you were going to dispatch yourself of the gangsters, maybe do that throughout or use them in an intelligent way. But I don't know, it just seemed like, and it seems like he has two kinds of nerve gas: a gas that kills and a gas that puts you to sleep. So which is it, Goldfinger? It's like he explains it. It becomes the gas becomes his trademark, but then it's like he kills them. I don't know.
And we were talking about the budget and the fact that Goldfinger the film has little action scenes, and then you get to the bank, you feel like this is okay. This is a studio stuff built. You kind of sense okay, this is gonna go in the usual Bond direction. They're gonna blow everything up. This is the grand finale. This is where the money went. But then no,
Nah.
just gunmen
Absolutely.
fighting in the outside.
But I actually like the whole scenario. It's pretty cool. The whole orchestration
No, yeah,
of how
the
the plan
scenario
Same,
goes.
yes, I agree.
And the fact that Goldfinger, I think, in addition to his character, is how sleazy it is. He changes to American costume. He kills his own man. He kills his own partner. He kills everyone who comes in. He flies off, and the main villain is really not killed in the grand finale. It's only after in the plane, and he's sucked off the plane.
Yeah.
It's such a grandiose
That
kind of
scene,
silly
yeah.
death.
Yeah, that scene is silly.
Yeah, he flies off like a balloon. I like this. I like
He's sucked out.
thinking of like ranking Bond villain deaths. The way it's so good to give them out deaths that are crazy and inventive. They just become a thing on its own. And if you see a curious thing like a little trademark of these early films, that Bond is always on the lookout when he enters a new room for bugs and such, like in Doctor No, in From Russia with Love, and here again, in a way, he's looking out for who is looking inside the room. That's like the filmmakers trying to assess what the real spy does, and not in a fantastical sort of way, but in the serious way. So on the plane, he's looking out for in what way are these guys like spying on me. So that's interesting. This recurrent theme thing. Any last thoughts?
I was gonna say that I feel like Skyfall is the mistake. Like it goes too much back to like traditional. Because the first two, the Casino Royale and Quantum, I feel like there's a clear break with the tradition of Bond. Jeez. With the tradition of Bond in a lot of ways. And then Skyfall seems to be about restoring that and like, oh, we bring back Moneypenny, even Q. The whole plot, the subtext seems to be about the relevance of the MI6 and the License to Kill 007 program. I don't know, I feel like who cares?
It was the 50 years. It was the 50 years of Bond, so they made a film that reflected that and that came back with that. So I understand.
But like, it's always been irrelevant. Who cares? Like, just
Okay, I talk from the perspective of a Bond fan, so
no, but I don't mean Bond as a character, or I mean the MI6 and the license. Like, it's not reflective of reality in the real sense. Like if this was a more honest. If Bond in general was more honest, like he wouldn't be that much of a hero. He would be way more like, he would be doing way more fucked up shit, way more gray area shit throughout the whole thing, not just in these new films. So like, I feel just make this the goofy spy thriller and get done with it. And that's why I like Skyfall, because it's really well built. Like, and the sequences are great, one after the other, I feel. The villain is great. But the subtext of, like, the relevance. And Spectre continues with this, too. Like, this whole debate on whether...
Spectre overstayed that theme. I didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it was done, so...
But you can look at Skyfall more simply in the sense that it's really about Bond and Silva and how both these men have this higher person guiding them, and to what extent is just a guidance and more of a control. I think, at least that's how I interpret this the overall theme of Skyfall. It's this M working as a puppet, and the extent that that's good to the lives of these people or not, and how it shapes them. I can see the more political subtext. I just for me it wasn't
I get, like, I don't know,
such a standout, I guess.
I live it very intensely.
I also think the emotional death of M, I don't care about her.
Really? You didn't care about her?
Like, Silva is the only character there that I feel like is interesting emotionally. And like in his relationship with them, I guess too, but it's not her. Like, she's just she's a bureaucrat. She's like telling orders. Like, yeah.
I think it's not I think she brings a charisma and tenderness to relating with Bond in specific as an agent that is different. Particularly being him an orphan, and I think retreating
that's
that
even
part
more
of him, that backstory.
And that's very intentional. Why they bring that up? That he's an orphan. Like, obviously. It's a lot easier to shape someone into a killing machine if they have.
But that's very interesting. That's contrasting there. That's complex.
Yeah, of course, I agree. But like, that doesn't make me like her more. It makes me like her less. Like, she's a little.
She gave him a job.
No, he could have fucking worked anywhere. You don't have to turn him into a killer. Like, it makes Bond more interesting for sure. But like, no, I don't.
She turned him into a killer, but at the same time, with tenderness, with motherly love.
No, I don't care.
No. To be fair, I think most of the emotional impact of M's death, I think, comes from more the relationship with Silva rather than M's relationship with Bond. I think, okay, she dies in Bond's arms, but I think it's mostly built around Silva and M. And how their relationship is much more, fucked up than probably we would say between James and M.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. That's why I said in her relationship with Silva, maybe, but even then, it just, for me, humanizes more Silva and by extension Bond, because like, Silva is sort of like what Bond could become if she does the same thing to him, like lets him die, because it's a positive it's an overall positive thing to do. And I feel like that's not really explored that well in that film, and then not in the subsequent films either. Like, I guess in this one, No Time to Die, there's a M again. It's no longer the same one, but he does some fucked up shit, messes up, makes a mistake. But again, I don't feel like the films are really that critical. They're just like, yeah, sometimes these states people, they do bad stuff, but they have good intentions, and that's it a lot of the times. And I don't know, I feel like that's I understand why they do that, but it's also not very interesting.
Well, that's the duality. For me, that was one of the things that worked in No Time to Die. It's the duality that he had good intentions, but he did a terrible thing.
But that's
and he
such
didn't
a
thought it through.
common trope in these films. It's always that. It's oh, we did a fucked up thing with good intentions. Like, of course, he's the good guy. You have nothing else you can do for him. I don't know. Like,
Well, because you're in these films where you're constantly dealing with, death and mayhem and causing death to others. You need to deal. Where's the good side of a character who is surrounded by this world and who deals with these kind of things? Particularly, apparently, in Craig's tenure, there's a lot to do with death and relating to death in a way. Even in looking at the grave of his parents, with Silva looking at the grave, there's always a hint to how he relates to death. And I think sometimes they overly do it with calling him an assassin. You're an assassin. How is she going to relate to you, my daughter? When Mr. White talks to him, they overly make it a theme, literally in conversations. But for me, that's the way you can do it. It's just the thing. It's always about how can you do it smartly. How can you do it in a way that goes beyond the cliche. But I don't know. To me. I think I am critical of him in No Time to Die when he does that, because Bond is critical as well.
Yeah, of course.
It raises some questions. I mean, how Bond knows apparently that there was a Heracles project. He is not that long in the job. No, Ralph Fiennes is not that long. No, Mallory. So when did this happen exactly, or is that back office talk that we don't know about? Like they break for coffee and then they start talking. So that Heracles project, what happened with that? This Russian scientist that affects. Oh, really? Oh, amazing. Well, talk to me about that. I'm just going off to, chase Blofeld or something. Don't forget to, take out the Aston Martin. That, by the way, the Aston Martin DB10 in Spectre is one of the best features of the film. I think it's great. Although the chase is not amazing. I love the car. A beauty.
I mean, it's a beautiful car.
It was intended to be an update, a modern update of the DB5. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting, the design of the car. Very lean. Few lines, it's beautiful. It's just a tease. Their idea of subverting the cliche is having no gadgetry in the car working, which to me is a fucking tease. Like,
boring.
Please give me the gadgets. Don't tease me with this.
Yeah.
Like, these chases are at least so poorly filmed. There's no one around in Rome at night. It's so boring. All is filmed with fucking sepia. It's all like brownish. It's boring to look at. That's why No Time to Die is so beautiful, because despite being TV, I think No Time to Die is very TV. Serial coverage. I don't like it.
Yeah.
But the editing does a lot of good work in terms of the action, and the colors are very vibrant. That's what I love about it. To me, it's a cool film, actually, because the sunset, the sunrise, the way they use it, they make it a very both sad and happy nostalgia film for me.
I think I understand the color thing you're saying. I think it's too much. It's a weird mix. It's like I can't describe it. It's very internal. It's neither amateur nor professional.
Really? Oh my God, that's so specific. Neither amateur or professional.
Yes, especially the scene, like that feeling gets carried into close-ups where it feels like the way they light it. It feels like the background is CGI. And I get this specific example.
I do agree that the lighting, they overuse
looks
the
so
warm
artificial.
versus cold.
Yeah.
It's very artificial. In quieter scenes, like when Bond is talking with Nomi at his house, and you see blue in the walls, like he has spotlights in the water pools around. That is fake. That doesn't happen. Blue is fake.
That would be like okay if the film maintained that like very hyper stylized or very artificial. I don't think it does. I
mean,
think
it gets
it's like in
carried
the
over to
middle.
other scenes.
I think it's like in a middle term of like realistic. Maybe not. I don't know.
They're
I don't know.
constantly using blue, orange, and red, which is like the basic, contrast lighting between warm light and cold light, and it's the office at Madeline's when Madeline is with doing therapy with Safin, same thing, blue all over, with yellow or orange in the mirrors in the above, or when you are in Am's office when the screen is on, that screen, that PowerPoint screen that is on the wall, it just shines blue on them. The blue is a constant thing, and it's a very sometimes it's very fake. It brings a fakery to the scenes. It never felt so fake as in Bond's house, because I don't know what that light is doing there. That light does not come from anywhere. It's like he has a pool and he has lights beneath it. Doesn't make sense.
Why didn't Sam Mendes direct this? Why was there a reason? Like, I feel like he was doing.
I
all right.
don't think so. Actually, I think he did a good job with Skyfall, but with Spectre, I was very disappointed.
I don't understand explain to me what's so bad about Spectre that it in relationship with Skyfall. I thought like Skyfall is better, but Spectre is like fine. It's okay.
For a starter, like the whole Blofeld, I think he was extremely weak. Spectre there wasn't a menace in Spectre. The relationship, they want to make me believe that he has a relationship with Madeline, a loving relationship that makes him give up and do that lame thing. You know what? No bullets. I'm not gonna kill you, Blofeld. It's first of all cliche and badly made to develop the relationship, and then the whole plan being surveillance around the world. I feel like I've seen that before in some other spy movie. And then the action scenes, it's so boring. They're so little inventive. I think most because, once again, Daniel Craig had an injury, and so they really made the action sequences a little bit, smaller. Like they make him pursue Dave Bautista on a plane, and so he's sitting on a plane and he's doing that thing. And a plane against cars is not. If the plane had, like machine gun something, and it's just not, it doesn't make it.
I don't know. For me, these films are. The action is always boring, pretty much. So
well, yeah, that's the standpoint where we differ. I really like the action.
Yeah.
So and I really value the action. So
yeah, but I do agree. In Spectre, I think it's a bit boring. Yeah.
And the visual is like boring. It's like Jesus Christ, it's ugly.
No, I don't think visual. It's ugly.
I
don't know. It has some nice moments.
They have some nice moments.
It's orange. It's very orange.
It's very orange.
I'll give you that. It's very.
it's very
unnecessary,
down.
And in comparison to Skyfall, which is very colorful,
exactly. And in comparison to No Time to Die, it brings me up.
All right, that I wouldn't do. If I compare Spectre to No Time to Die, I think it's more colorful. No Time to Die, but it's not like a visual feast or anything like that.
I think No Time to Die is a visual feast in comparison to Spectre.
I think the camera movement.
Sure, the mise en scène sometimes.
Yeah, the mise en scène of Sam Mendes is much better. Here, I feel like I'm watching like a eye level TV show.
That's the thing. I think No Time to Die makes it seem as if they achieve this level of light and color through very abrupt, intense color correction, whereas the other films were just better lit.
I agree with that, and I agree it does look TV. No Time to Die looks TV, but visually, just in the color of it and how I think the work of editing, especially in the actions, it's more vibrant to me than Spectre. And Skyfall is better than Spectre. I think being the same director, I find it a bit strange.
I think obviously it's better, but I don't think it's like an insane dip of quality. For me,
no, it's not. Maybe I'm being too
maybe
stressful about it, but no, it's not. Of course, I think of course, he's a good director. I think he still did a nice job. There are interesting scenes. I like the meeting scene in Spectre, how he tries to evoke past Spectre meetings. I don't think it is a boring scene like some people say on the web. No, it's actually pretty interesting that everything becomes silent and he's menacing and all. So,
I think all I'll say, I think
as an end note,
I think Spectre, the scene where Daniel Craig is telling Madeline to not look at the footage of the father committing suicide or whatever, I think that's more emotionally effective than anything. Or not more emotionally effective than anything on No Time to Die, but more more earned and feels more like a real moment between the characters than anything on Time to Die. Especially like the ending of No Time to Die is sad, and I feel sad because it's like, oh, this special agent was finally settling down as a family and doesn't get to enjoy it. It's the same as in On Her Majesty's Secret Service in a way, and that's why you feel sad, because he's lost the thing that he just gained.
Yeah, he's an orphan. He always fought all his life. He never had anyone. He's an orphan.
On top of all that, is an orphan. I mean, goddamn.
That's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and Facebook pages. Don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Bond fans.